My name is Alex Rodriguez. This is Winning Friends and Influencing People, techniques attackers use to hack the human mind. So, a little bit about me and her. I worked at, or I've been working at Secure Ideas for about 5 years now and done various social engineering engagements there. I mainly have been a pen tester for those 5 years, but I also do operations and developing different tools and some community organizations that I've been a part of is the open source or community version of Secure Ideas, which is Professionally Evil, as well as 49 Security Division and my general personal open source work as well. And the reason why Jennifer here has been put as a picture on the screen is because she actually was the one that came up with these slides originally. And I'm subbing in for her because we had issues with her being able to make it. So she did all the content and then I kind of adapted it to my presentation style. A brief overview of social engineering. Any act that influences a person to take an action that may or may not be in their best interest. The Verizon 2022 data breach report stated that about 82% of breaches were caused by social engineering attacks, such as phishing and vishing. And in order to understand how those attacks work, we first need to look at the different stages of an attack, the tools that were used or are used, and techniques during an engagement as well. So this is kind of a high-level overview of what the actual attack cycle is. We've got the information gathering stage. That's the starting point, where you can then use that information to help establish relationships and rapport, which moves into the exploitation phase, and then execution, where you end up actually leaving. So we'll go in a little bit more detail into that. So sources of information that can vary from the actual company's website, doing Google dorking, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Those are kind of like the online versions. A company's website can be really useful because they can actually link to HR systems and other really useful resources that you can use during different types of attacks. Gathering as much information as you can then help with being able to be relatable with someone. Complaining about, oh, the HR system is annoying. If you can see that they've been complaining or the HR system that they're using has been down from social media. Google dorking has been really useful. It's been scary, the amount of things that you can find whenever you do that. I specifically have been able to find health insurance information, as in not the people's health insurance information, but health insurance information for the company that they provide to their employees, which actually ended up not showing up on Google specifically, but DuckDuckGo, which I thought was quite interesting. So using various search engines to find that information is also useful as well. And then Twitter, that's been hit or miss for me. But then LinkedIn and Facebook helps give you a understanding as to who the people are and different technologies that they're using inside their organization. Those have asterisks next to them because make sure you're not doing that with your personal accounts, or else you might end up doxing yourself to the company that you're pen testing, and then they have determined that they're having a vishing or phishing attempts against their company. So another last resort for more physical type of social engineering is dumpster diving, which is really important, especially for banks and other high level or critical information, to make sure that they're disposing of information securely. And if they're just throwing it away, then you can end up using that in your attack. And any information you can get helps aid your social engineering attack. So any information is good. And the information gathered can also help increase your attack success. So if you end up having more information that helps aid in a vishing or phishing attempt, you might want to try and do that instead of trying to do an actual physical social engineering attempt. So with establishing relationships, first contact is key, especially whenever you're trying to assume a role of authority or any type of way that you can gain trust or be likable to that target. The first contact ends up making or breaking the relationship. So You can either try and go after a simple attack, which is you try and have someone hold open the door while you're carrying heavy items, or you can ask them, call into tech support and try and just say, hey, I don't know how to delete this file off my computer. Can you help me? And sometimes those small wins can end up leading into the complex attack to establish relationship. So once that person has helped you and they felt better about it, you can then use that small advantage or small gain to your advantage because they now trust you a little bit more because they helped aid you through an issue. So using those small wins help build. All right. And then exploitation, gaining access to information or gaining access or critical information, such as passwords, building information, key cards, badges. That can really vary based on what's accessible to you and what you can potentially lift out of the building or use to progress farther into their network. Then there's the execution. So this is the end of your attack, and you want to try and leave the victim feeling happy, and you want them to feel like they've actually helped you out. So that way you can not have any type of suspicion whenever you end up trying to leave as quickly as you can and not raise any eyebrows. So having that happiness feeling and being able to leave without any type of suspicion is really important, especially if you end up wanting to continue to leverage that relationship in the future. So here's a few examples of tools that you can use throughout your social engineering engagement. You can use spoofed numbers or burner phones. Those can either be physical or virtual. The star next to the virtual is because be careful what applications you end up using for virtual numbers. If the company that provides the virtual application is, say, from China, and your company doesn't allow you to use third-party services that are hosted by a foreign nation, and they could potentially be recording your conversations. Make sure that you're going through the approved authority or approved vendors that your company has for that. So just be careful with what's freely available whenever you try to do virtual numbers. The social engineering toolkit or set, I've personally have never had very good experiences with it, but I also feel like it seems to hate me whenever I try to do it. I have a coworker that he has the same situation with Metasploit, to where every time he tries to run Metasploit, he says, I swear Metasploit and Linux hate me in general. So I feel that same way about the social engineering toolkit. The OSINT framework is a website that helps show you where or what techniques and tools you can use for various types of attacks, whether that's gathering email information. OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence. So you can use that website to end up finding more resources for your attack. And then some physical tools that you can use are lockpicks and bypass tools and recording devices / cameras. You could also end up leaving some type of remote access tool, which is the bottom picture in there is a Raspberry Pi. You kind of just plug that into an Ethernet cable, let it remotely connect back into a C2 server or a device that you have control of. And as long as there aren't any security mechanisms in place to prevent that, you can have remote access to their environment. So those are some tools. And then these are the various ways that you can influence people, the different tactics you can use. So authority can range from legal to organizational. So you can impersonate a third-party lawyer firm and essentially try to have them believe that you're going to press charges unless they provide information, compared to organizational would be more of a C-level individual trying to say, you need to get this to me now or else I'm going to fire you. No. So next one is commitment and consistency. If you want someone to do a big favor for you, ask for something small first. And that's kind of with the whole information I'd said earlier about being able to ask for a small thing like, hey, can you help me delete this file off my computer? And then asking for a password reset afterwards. They already feel like they have a connection with you because you asked them to help you with something and you successfully completed that task. There's concession, which is a quid pro quo. So you concede something to increase your chances of getting something in return. So you can you can request something from the individual that you know that they're not going to be okay doing, and then end up accepting a lower uh, lower task instead. So that way you can make them feel as though, hey, I couldn't get my password reset, but I was able to reset my computer or something. So liking is the next one. I actually listened to a really awesome podcast episode from Darknet Diaries, and the uh, person that Jack Rhysider interviewed was called Jack Hyde, and it was an amazing display of social engineering to where they actually impersonated an external company, or they impersonated another branch of the same company, and they sent emails back and forth to each other, acting like they were preparing something months in advance. And then they sent the email to a group that was inside the company in, I believe it was Mexico or something. It was another country or state. And so whenever they did that, the person that they sent the email to would see the history of them trying to build things up. And whenever they asked them, hey, can you help us out here? They felt like this had been building for a while. And so they ended up building into trusting them more because they'd already built up that thread of conversation. But it was a really awesome story that I definitely recommend people listen to. Uh, Obligation is abusing social contracts, which, like I mentioned before, is trying to get someone to hold a door open for you. So that way you don't have to badge in. Reciprocation, people will give you something back if you give them something first. So the door analogy again, instead of them opening up the first door, which might not have a lock on it, you know that the second door has a lock on it. So you open the first door for them, and then they end up badging in and holding the door open for you because they believe that it's just a reciprocation of kindness back towards each other. Scarcity, putting a time limit on things so people can't think before they actually need to respond. And this can be subliminal to where it's, hey, you need to take care of this as soon as you can. It's not super urgent, but whenever you get around to it. So that way they realize there is a time limit, but it doesn't have to be as urgent because the urgency that a lot of scams, the urgency from the scammers out there has been abused a lot. So being able to do that in a tasteful way helps people try and realize and recognize that they need to act soon, but it doesn't have to necessarily be immediately. And then social proof is the last one, which is behave a certain way to make your target behave the same way. So these are the different attacks we're going to cover, and we're going to walk through at least one scenario for each one of these. Before we do that, though, one really important thing for any type of social engineering engagement is pretexting. So it's more than just a lie. It's something that you end up building the entire scenario to help identify and guide the conversation on how you want to try and manipulate your target. It's always contextual to each person, so it's not one size fits all. So you always want to try and identify as much information as you can per the person that you're trying to target. And then it relies on the trust that you build throughout the entire relationship. So that trust ends up leading into the rest of the exploitation phase. All right. So Vishing or voice phishing. Some tools that you can end up using for that is caller ID spoofing or burner phones, which we briefly talked about before. So this is an example. In the Vishing phase, or in Vishing, we have an information gathering phase. So target organization called Pets Incorporated. They own two different payroll programs, which is cat and dog. They're based in the UK with 2 office locations. The public website indicates 10 different companies that use their software. One of the companies listed is listed as using the dog software and has an employee that you can reasonably impersonate. So from there, you take that scenario and you place the call to the office dedicated to the cat software. This way you can then say, I'm having issues accessing the dog software. I need to reset my password. The help person says they don't have access to the dog software, but they can contact them and get a ticket started for you. Since they're creating that ticket from an internal system, it has more of an authority compared to if you as an individual created a ticket externally and they realize that it's an external person. So having an internal ticketing system, or if they had passed you along from another internal number, then having that kind of gained trust from using that, from the view of that secondary person in dog software, allows you to have more trust with that next interaction with the individual. So you explain that you're on vacation. The password reset you can't access for your regular work email. So can I send it to a personal Gmail that you just happened to have created right before you started this engagement? 30 minutes later, you receive an email link and no further action is needed outside of, or no further action was taken because it's outside of the scope of the engagement. This was actually a personal story that Jennifer had done for a company, and she found it pretty funny because she impersonated the CISO for the company, and she had no UK or English accent, and they just completely believed her. So, getting a little low on time, so I'm going to kind of speed through these a little bit more. So fabricated it as an emergency, tried to make it more urgent, transfer them to the correct department because they weren't the same company, but they were able to give more information or give more trust through that interaction. And using that social nature of, or the social helpful nature of help desk employees trying to solve solutions for their employees. So ways that this could be prevented. They should have given her the number instead of trying to route them internally. So that way she can call from her number instead of routing them through internal numbers. And they should not have tried to send a password reset for an email that was not on file. So phishing, obtaining information through electronic methods, tricking the victim into downloading malware or capturing credentials through it. And it's pretty much the most common common vector for social engineering. But messaging platforms can also be used. So this is an example of a coronavirus email. And this is going to be another example after that that I actually personally was able to do. I briefly mentioned that I found the health plans disclosed through Google Dorking, and I identified that there was a new executive based on a press release. And then I identified that the benefits period had just closed because they were broadcasting it on their website saying health plans are closing soon, and they gave the exact date and a countdown timer. So the next day, once I knew that the health plans had closed, I was able to send this email. I think everyone should be able to see it pretty well, but just in case. Good morning, all. All of you know, the open enrollment for benefits last night closed. Unfortunately, the third party had issues with processing some of the accounts. It appears most of the affected accounts have been, and I listed out the 2 health plans that I had found from Google Dorking. They will keep these accounts open for the next 48 hours, so it's a slight degree of urgency, but not super urgent. Please navigate to the company's portal to validate the account setup is good for next year. And I put the link for the actual portal account, but then I used a different link for the actual hyperlink. No other action is needed, so this helps with the conclusion of the attack. So that way you don't have to have any other types of interaction with them at all. It's just, hey, this is an executive saying there was an issue, go fix it, and that's all you have to do. So I put the executive's name. I had a headshot for the press release from a press release that I had posted the exec's headshot in here. So that way it gives it a bit more of a trusting feeling. I listed out the position and name. And then I actually took the signature from our point of contact and re-implemented that in the actual email that I sent out. So you could do similar with trying to email their support desk and gaining their signature from that as well. But just an example that I was able to do for and was actually very successful. I actually noticed that someone from their company had forwarded it to someone else and gave their credentials as well. So pretty interesting. So whenever they clicked on the link, it brought them to a page that was the same login screen. I had actually fully duplicated it with like a wget command. And it would, after they submitted the credentials, it would just redirect them to the actual portal. So this is why it works, how to safeguard against it. So here, quick few physical examples. Again, running low on time, so I'm just kind of speeding through a little bit. Why it works, and then how to prevent it. So essentially just help your employees feel comfortable to challenge people. If you help them feel comfortable doing that, then whenever a real attacker does it and someone challenges them, they end up not having any issues. Thank you, and this is a quick gift to help conclude the presentation.
Thanks for watching. Achieve your next level of skills with training courses at antisyphontraining.com.